yeah, I think I could probably learn something from some stuff, some intermediate distances between what I have done in that. And but yeah, but when I was getting ready to do that, there was I did a bunch of podcast episodes with people who've done either transcon or similar type things, and then after that I've always kind of tried to keep my finger on the pulse of when people are doing stuff like that. So I've had Christian Morgan, it's been on a couple times. He used to have the southbound Appalachian Trail record. It actually just got broken by Tara Dower.
Tara, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, she crushed. It was like 40 days or something like that.
insane.
Uh yeah, and I think she I haven't unpacked the data from it yet, but I did a podcast episode with another guy who does a lot of ultra content stuff, Joe Corcione, and he was saying that it looked like at least on her Strava that she sort of like negative split it where she was like just hauling at the end.
Yeah,
And there's a couple like two things every time I've talked to these people that they've told me are like just like that just it seemed like everyone had this message was those first few days are are really rough because you kind of have that like gradual descent and you can kind of tell like day two is worse than day one, day three is worse than day two, and it's really hard psychologically to kind of get in to not get into this mindset of like, especially if you have something as long as like a transcon or 1,000 miles of like, okay, it's gonna just like linearly digress from here,
yeah,
and you're already kind of getting to this pretty low point and you start kind of having a hard time wrapping around about how it could get much worse. But then it sort of kind of like normalizes and then you sort of start feeling a little bit better. And you're not going to feel amazing at any point at there, but you're going to feel like, okay, I can start wrapping my head around keeping doing this because it's not like one day's worse than the next any longer.
yeah,
So you get like this like few days to kind of like just get your body sort of like used to like this is like not the scientific way to think about it, but it's like you can almost shock your body into thinking like, okay, well, this isn't ending, like might as well get comfortable. It's the way the experience kind of sounds to me when they tell it. So
So I will have a benefit in that regard because I didn't know any of this, didn't know expect any of this when I did the 500-mile run across Oregon.
Mhm.
And at the time, in retrospect, I was not ready, prepared, or like that was I was way ambitious. And I paid some serious prices along the way for that. But I basically my first 3 days, I barely eked out a marathon each day. I like
okay.
just my biorhythms, nothing was there. I wasn't used to the elevation. I had to adjust my water ratios. I had to adjust like some small things with my electrolytes, but I just hadn't found my rhythm. I didn't feel like myself. I didn't feel like I felt the day before I was about to start when I was confident and dialed in and sure I was just going to crush this and develop a
Hmm.
57-mile a day pace and just hold it all the way through nice and clean. I
Yeah.
didn't feel like that guy. It messed with my head a bit for the first 3 days. Now, in retrospect, I know like the elevation played a part, like magnified that too some. 'Cause it just makes you feel a little off if you go up 6,000 feet in a day
Yeah.
and then just start to run. But that was the thing, and the way I describe it to people is the longer you're out, essentially it's like a reverse or what would they call it? I believe the academic an inverse relationship between like the state of your body and the state of your mind. So I
Yeah.
started out, and my body on paper like felt great, and my mind was like, I didn't feel good. I wasn't thinking clearly. I didn't have energy. And then the longer we went, the better my mind felt. The more I was finding my groove. The more I was like getting used to everything. But then like my joints, the muscles, the more that degraded. So it was just like this like constant. And by the end, I felt amazing, like a quasi sense of like meditative enlightenment. But my body was a mess. I think at the end we counted like 8 legitimate injuries, like it's like
Oh wow.
ankle sprains, torn ligament in the finger from a fall, like just all these little things. And like
Hmm.
not one of them was devastating or enough to like stop me from running, just to slow me down. And then that was the only time in my life I've had like a real bad blister to the point that it actually my entire toe that it was on got infected down to the root, and
Mm.
it was like it was like an actually infected toe. But that was again just like it all seems so far away, and it was a trip, and I'd experienced that before. You know, running well, especially running races I wasn't quite prepared for, running distances I wasn't quite prepared for, but that magnified it considerably. So I am expecting that on a greater scale in this next one for sure.
Hmm. Yeah. The other thing that I heard a lot was, maybe this was just because I asked this question to pretty much everyone, was just like what they were doing from like a fueling standpoint
Yep.
and how their body was sort of keeping up with stuff. And the folks that were able to kind of more or less maintain weight or come close to it, I think it's probably a tall task to try to maintain weight on a for
Yeah.
transcon or something like that. But
Right.
there'd be stores people losing 20 plus pounds, and then other ones where people were losing like two or three,
Yeah.
and like even to the degree where I think it might have been Dean Karnassus who he's done it at least twice, maybe more. And he's had both experiences where one, he lost a bunch of weight and the other he tried to maintain. And I think another time he even went in like a fair bit overweight, just
Yeah.
preempting that a little bit.
Yeah. I've
And
done that.
yeah, and the ones that were able to kind of maintain or stay closer to kind of their typical weight uh tended to bounce like feel a little bit better at the end and then bounce back a lot quicker.
Yeah.
So
That
like
makes
they
sense.
didn't have this huge like tail effect of like I feel miserable for the next few months and then